Hi, I'm your iFit guide, Mick Davie, and I hope you're feeling good because we're about to walk through 1,000 years of history. So grab some water, we're going to get that heart rate up as we explore Istanbul together. Napoleon Bonaparte famously said that if Earth were a single state, Istanbul would be its capital. For many, this geographical crossroads uniting Asia and Europe still lives up to that lofty sentiment. It's a place teeming with international commerce, packed with culture and architecture. And today, we'll start our walk in this direction over to the Serefiye Cisterns, an underground engineering feat that, believe it or not, was lost for nearly a millennium. Our walk will then end at the Suleymaniye Mosque, which for 400 years reigned as the biggest mosque in the city, and in my opinion, is still by far the most beautiful. We got a great day ahead of us. Well, I hope you're feeling good and warmed up because we're about to get sporty. Over here is the Hippodrome. Like many cities of the Roman Empire, in 203 a hippodrome was built so that the ancient citizens of Istanbul could enjoy the great chariot races. Like Charlton Heston in the feature film Ben-Hur, riders risked their lives jockeying around this enormous oval racetrack. Now, very little of the Hippodrome, the original Hippodrome, still exists, but we know it was nearly 1,500 feet long and over 400 feet wide. And there was enormous banks of stone stadium seating on both sides and in a horseshoe at the end that could hold 100,000 spectators who came here to cheer the competitors. Interestingly, the Hippodrome was one of the few places in ancient Rome, in Constantinople at that time, in which the lowly peasant class could share a seat with an upper-class senator or even the emperor. So wagering or betting consisted on placing bets on your favorite chariot team. The charioteers themselves were oftentimes slaves, and they entered on chariots in procession wearing short tunics and represented by the different colors they wore. There were four main teams, and of course they were serenaded by musicians as they paraded around the grounds here. Then, after a magistrate dropped the cloth, the racers flogged their horses around the stadium at breakneck pace. It was the sort of NASCAR racing of the Roman Empire, if you will. And to the victor of the race went a crown of wreathed leaves and sometimes a cash reward. And champion racers became celebrities, and they could actually buy their freedom if they won enough races. But most racers, sadly, died on the racetrack, given the very dangerous nature of the competition. So over here you can see one of the original artifacts that adorned the middle of the Hippodrome racetrack. This is a 3,500-year-old obelisk that the Romans stole from the Egyptians and brought to Istanbul to decorate the city. In a way, it looks almost brand new. It has a sort of shiny sheen on the outside of it. And that's because it's made of granite, which is incredibly hard. It doesn't wear very easily. And you can see the original Egyptian hieroglyphs on the outside. Really quite incredible. The obelisk sits on top of a Roman plinth. And you can see this is a representation of senators and spectators watching the races here at the Hippodrome. And down below, you can see four chariots and 4 slaves driving those chariots. They're the representation of the 4 main teams who used to race in this hippodrome. Now there is a bloodier side, a darker side to the story of the hippodrome. At one point, the city rose up against Emperor Justinian in a rebellion, and this angered the emperor. So he sent out his troops and he quelled the rebellion. Then, in revenge against his political enemies, he used his generals to lure 30,000 of his enemies into the hippodrome. Then he sealed the doors, and a small army of mercenaries murdered all 30,000 of those people. Can you imagine the mess? Can you imagine the horror? And ironically, this Emperor Justinian, who ordered this enormous massacre, later went on to write the Justinian Code, which forms the basis of our legal system today. So the man who ordered the massacre also wrote the Justinian Code, which forms the basis of our legal system. Kind of ironic, isn't it? So we're now en route to one of the most beautiful sites in Istanbul, the Suleymaniye Mosque. And en route, we're going to see some other fascinating things. Take a look at this. This is Constantine's column. As you might have guessed, it was built by Emperor Constantine. And at one point, it was adorned at the top by a solid gold statue of Constantine himself. The statue was struck by lightning and then removed and was never seen again. Now, Constantine's mother doted over her son, and to help him in his mission to make Istanbul, or Constantinople as it was called then, a place of real religious significance, it's said that she had brought to Istanbul priceless religious relics, including the crown of thorns that Christ wore at his crucifixion, the nails that pierced his hands, and a cup of breast milk from Mary, the mother of Christ. And those relics are allegedly buried underneath this column. We'll keep walking. It's pretty wild to think you might be on your way to work one morning in Istanbul, you jump off the tram line over here, and you walk past Constantine's column within just a few feet of Christ's crown of thorns. History everywhere in this city. So we're heading up this gentle little hill. You're going to feel your machine start to incline as we head towards a really unusual sight. One of the magical things about this city is that it looks utterly modern, but if you scratch the surface, you'll find layer after layer after layer of history right underneath your feet. Like, take this coffee shop for an example, a beautiful new glass and steel building, and you would never suspect what's underneath. Maybe take this as an opportunity to have a quick cup of water, and we're going to head down into something really unusual. Okay, gently as you go. So right down here, right underneath the espresso machine above us, we descend from the 21st century into the 5th century. These are the Serefiye Cisterns. During Roman times, Constantinople, as the city was called, then had a water problem. They had enough water for daily household use, but if the city was attacked, which it often was, and the enemy laid siege to the city, then the residents quickly ran out of water. And to solve this problem, the Romans built the world's longest aqueduct, which carried water over 180 miles from the mountains of Bulgaria all the way here. And the water was stored in these cisterns or water tanks. There are over 140 of these hand-dug cisterns underneath Istanbul, and they're all held up by these enormous and beautiful columns. In those days, the water would have reached all the way up to those arches up there, nearly 30 feet deep. And if you look closely in the corners over here, you'll see that they're not actually hard, sharp, right-angle corners. The Roman engineers knew that you had to give the corners of the building, of the cistern, a soft curved edge and the entire room a slightly circular shape. Otherwise, the water pressure would break the walls down. The cisterns were, of course, dug by slaves, thousands of slaves, and nobody knows exactly how many of those poor souls perished in the building of the cisterns. And when I say slave, the assumption is often that I mean African slaves, but in fact the word slave comes from the word Slav, and it was Slavic people from the Balkans, Ukraine and Russia who were forced to build these cisterns. You might also ask, why would the Romans go to the trouble of using such beautiful and ornately carved pillars or columns if they were only going to submerge them in water and bury them underground? Well, the answer is this. By the time these cisterns were being built, Christianity had become legal. Prior to that, it was a hidden, illegal sect. And the Romans wanted to get rid of their pagan past and the temples that littered this region. So emperors and engineers went around deconstructing those pagan temples, temples dedicated to Apollo, Aphrodite, and others. And they used the columns, brought them here, and used them to hold up the roof of the cisterns. They were very good recyclers. All right, let's head up and get some fresh air and keep going with our walk. We've got a bit of a steep set of steps. I'm feeling my calves burning. I hope you are too. Your machine should be inclining quite steeply at this point. Keep it up. At the top, you can grab a drink of water. Nearly there. Okay. Ooh, I can definitely feel that. Have a drink of water, get hydrated, stay fresh. We've got a long way to go and some fantastic stuff to see. So over here to my left, we have the entrance to the Grand Bazaar. And we do a great walk through there in one of our other episodes, so be sure to check that one out. The Grand Bazaar is one of the world's truly great markets. There are over 4,000 shops in there selling everything from gold to carpets, antiques, spices from as far away as Afghanistan. And it was built by Mehmet the Conqueror in 1461. That was 31 years before the first colony in America, the Ottomans, had the world's first indoor shopping mall. So we are now approaching another of my favorite places in Istanbul. The Suleymaniye Mosque was the fourth Ottoman imperial mosque to be built, and it's considered one of the most important works of Ottoman architecture. The moment you walk in here, you just feel the coolness brought by the trees and this lovely tranquility that gets you behind these thick walls and with this lovely green grass. So the mosque was commissioned by Suleiman the Magnificent, the 10th Ottoman Sultan, and it was finished in 1557. For 462 years, the Suleymaniye Mosque was the largest mosque in the city. Up here on the minarets, you can see the 10 balconies, and those 10 balconies pay tribute to Suleiman being the 10th emperor of the empire. As a warring sultan, few rival Suleiman I in expanding the Ottoman Empire. He conquered Belgrade, Rhodes, Hungary, and it's been said that during his reign, the Ottoman Empire became the most powerful state in the world. But Suleiman was largely revered for creating a uniform code of Ottoman law, a code of justice that served the empire for 300 years. Suleiman was both a poet and an art lover, and he was ruled by his many passions. Suleiman broke Muslim tradition, for example, by marrying a woman named Roxolana, a red-headed Polish Christian and member of his harem at Topkapi Palace. Now, Suleiman granted her, unusually, the title of chief consultant to the Sultan, making her the first woman to hold such a title in the entire empire. And later, she played a very active role in the political affairs and the development of major public works. She also gave birth to Suleiman's future heir to the throne, Sultan Selim II. Let's pass through here. We're still on the outskirts of the mosque, and this is hallowed ground. This is actually the mausoleum area. This is an Islamic graveyard. These are the gravestones you can see just over here. And these mausoleums house the remains of Sultan Suleiman, and over there, his wife Roxolana, and also the architect who built this mosque. His name was Mimar Sinan, and he's buried in these grounds as well. Mimar Sinan is a very interesting character in his own right. Mimar was captured by the Ottomans when he was a young boy. He was a Christian, and he was recruited into the Sultan's army. He became a janissary. He then became an engineer within the Ottoman army. And after years and years of very rigorous training in mathematics and higher level engineering, he became an architect. And it's said that he built over 500 major buildings in Istanbul and Turkey. Many of those don't exist anymore, but more than 120 of them still do. He's considered the greatest architect of the Muslim world. And when we go inside, you're going to get a sense of why he's revered just so highly. The interior of this mosque is heavenly. Every time I come into this building, it just takes my breath away as I look up at this incredible vaulted ceiling. The delicate quality of the light, the subtle colors, and the magnificent architecture. It's just incredible, so moving. And if you slowly come and have a look up here, you'll notice that between every 3 or 4 lamps, there's an ostrich egg hanging from the chandelier. The architect, Mimar Sinan, had ostrich eggs hung from the dome within the chandeliers to serve as a natural insect repellent, because the eggs give off an odor that bugs and spiders don't like. And in the old days, the mosque was illuminated by candles and oil lamps, and the black, sooty smoke was channeled through an air purification that filtered and collected the remnant grime in a special soot room, which is upstairs. The collected soot was later mixed with tar and slathered on the hooves of camels, which carried pilgrims to Mecca and back. That same mixture was scraped off those camel hooves and used to make a kind of ink, a sort of holy ink that the finest Ottoman calligraphers used to write out the verses of the Quran. This house in praise of Allah was constructed in marble, harvested anew from quarries, and then mixed with remnants of other structures retrieved from the fallen Roman Empire. The interior of the mosque was created to serve as a sound box that would elevate Islamic chants. Sinan's design, which consists of abutting half domes and small lateral domes and windows, created a man-made soundscape or sound box, which was unparalleled in the Middle East. Suleiman the Magnificent commanded 20 worshippers to recite the words, "There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet," at least 3,500 times per day within these walls. As a result, the Sultan would spiritually benefit from this Muslim recital to Allah 70,000 times every day. So, as you can see here in the middle of the mosque, people are beginning to pray, and all devout Muslims are literally called to prayer 5 times daily by the muezzin, who cries out, "Allah is most great. I testify that there is no God but Allah. I testify that Muhammad is the prophet of Allah. Come to prayer, come to salvation. Allah is most great. There is no God but Allah." Here at the Suleymaniye Mosque, worshippers are baptized in the forgiving divine light of Allah, light that streams in from 249 windows and the low-hanging lamps, giving the space an ethereal, almost heavenly quality. To quote the Quran, "God is the light of the heavens and earth." But to give credit where credit is due, the architect Sinan's mathematic sense of precision, of perfect symmetry, makes this mosque both otherworldly and transcendent. Congratulations, you finished the walk. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I had such a pleasure spending this time with you. I'm Mick Davie, your iFit guide, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.